Any ideas as to title?
Yeah. We joked about a lot of stuff.
We talked for a long time. What do we talk about? Oh, I need to stop recording. Hang on 1 second.
On the Dallas Opera Network, you're listening to Opera Box Score.
Let's get ready to rumble!
Wherever you are, however you're listening, this is America's Talk radio show about opera. It's Opera Box Score. I'm George Cederquist, joined this week by Weston Williams and Ashlee Hardgrave. All right, here we go. Chalk Talk. The season announcements are coming in faster than Anna Netrebko's separation from Putin and harder than Will Smith at an awards ceremony. We're going to talk you through all the season details that you need to know. And then, Fire Shut Up in My Bones is, well, it's on fire. We play Monday Evening Quarterback and review the recent PBS screening. Plus, 2-minute drill. Oh my gosh, Anna, what have you done this time? If you're watching on TDO, make sure you subscribe to the podcast. Get the full show. Stitcher, Spotify, you're going to click follow. If you're on Apple Podcasts, you just hit the plus sign. And again, send us a voice memo. Email us your hot takes, operaboxscore@gmail.com. Get your voice heard. Get that OBS beer coaster and the OBS lapel pin just for sharing your own hot take. Spring has sprung here in Chicago and on the team. Baseball season's here. Weston, what else is here?
I adopted a dog over the weekend, so I've got that in the other room waiting for me to feed it and rub its belly. So I've had a pretty lovely spring so far.
Marvelous. Award season is here. And Ashlee, how about you? What's here?
Well, hello from a lovely hotel room in Philadelphia. I think I'm going to, before the end of the season, try to record this in as many major cities as possible that is not the city I actually live in. But one thing I do want to mention is it's apparently not sportsmanship season. Because if anybody watched the Duke North Carolina game in the Final Four over the weekend, Duke did lose to their longtime rival North Carolina, and Wendell Moore was the only Duke player to stay on the court after the loss and shake hands after the game. In a world of sore losers, perhaps we all try to be a little more like Wendell Moore.
I think so. Of course, Duke losing to UNC in the regular season and in the March Madness as well. If you are Mike Krzyzewski and you're going to go out, to go out losing twice to UNC is crazy. Of course, this evening, Kansas battling UNC in the big game. Tobias Wright, former co-host, currently peeing his pants right now.
And serves him right for abandoning us.
Huge Kansas fan. We'll see if that game gets underway while we're still recording. In the meantime, we're going to talk some opera.
Chalk Talk on Opera Box Score.
Fire Shut Up in My Bones, the opera composed by jazz legend Terence Blanchard, of course, opened the Metropolitan Opera season back in October as the first opera by a Black composer ever to be done at the Met. It's in Chicago through the beginning of April, where it's the second opera ever done by a Black composer, the first being the opera Amistad. I caught it on great performances on the PBS station. That was the Met HD broadcast earlier this week. Weston, I want to start with you. Tell us where you saw the show, what modality you saw the show as, and one thing that really struck you about it.
Well, I saw it at the Lyric Opera of Chicago before last week's episode, actually, so we couldn't talk about it to avoid spoilers for you guys. But I'm glad we are talking about it a little bit because it really is a kind of watershed moment, I think. Seeing it live was very interesting. The production was very sort of much more sort of flat than you would expect. There's a big sort of cube in the middle with some lights in it and then projections all around, which I couldn't quite see from the cheap seats way in the back. But there was definitely something to like the stark sort of minimalism of it. It reminded me of that the production that the Met had for a few years of Eugene Onegin, which is the big blank sort of space where you let the drama really take hold. And Will Liverman really was the linchpin of it all. Like there's a moment at the end of the first act where you're starting to get a sense of what's actually happened to him, because you open the opera and sort of in media res, he's pointing a gun, yelling about killing someone to the manifestation of his loneliness, and you don't really know what's going on. So you like learn more and more until you get to the end of the opera, but you've learned about his abuse and his life at this point, and there's just a moment where he's just repeating the same phrase over and over as the curtain's coming down, and like you could feel the energy in the audience. And also I will say, like, the audience in the Lyric was super engaged. They were all in it. They were all like watching, not necessarily like, having like huge reactions to everything, but like there's like this quiet sort of like commitment to the action that I haven't seen at the Lyric in a really long time. Very diverse audience as well. It was truly something. Like it obviously the big news for them is that, of course, with the great performances, the Met, it's the first time a Black composer has been performed. But even in a place where here in Chicago, where we've done that before, it still had that weight of history with it. And it was a really moving experience to me, I think.
Ashlee, how did you see Fire Shut Up in My Bones?
I also saw it at the Lyric. I saw it on a different evening than when Weston was there. I saw it the day after we recorded last week, actually. And the thing is, when I saw this opera very differently than I usually go and see live opera. When I go in, even if it's a piece that I know very well, I will just kind of like gear up and like get my game face on. I'll read a synopsis. I'll familiarize myself with some of the singers or elements of the production. Because this is a new piece, I just went in cold. I knew there was heavy subject matter involved, but I didn't read any synopsis. I didn't read about libretto. I am familiar with Will. I'm familiar with LaTonya, but that was as far as I went. And it was a very different and very moving and impactful experience for me to just like let it happen to me, as opposed to like anticipating what was coming next, waiting for the money aria, waiting for the money note, whatever it was. And when you're looking at new pieces, and when you're seeing new productions or productions that are new to the piece or whatever, there's kind of two things. You're sort of in one corner of your brain, you're evaluating the piece itself, and what it, the music and the text and sort of what the actual things are that are on the page. And then on the other side of your brain, that's where you're evaluating the actual production elements, the performances that are happening in front of you. Because with something like a Tosca or a butterfly or even a flute, it's like, we know what's happening. People can get so creative with staging, but it's really about like evaluating the performance as opposed to evaluating the piece itself. And here with something new, it's like you're doing both things at the same time. And, Will is incredible. He was made to do this role. He was made to tell this story, and it's a very moving performance. We should also congratulate, by the way, Justin Austin and Whitney Morrison, who went on as Charles and Billy for the April 2nd performance there in Chicago, and I think it was both of their it was Justin Austin's Met debut for sure. For me, the most moving things that, God, there were so many things that were moving, but the handful of things that I'll shout out right now. We've talked about Will. Will is impeccable. His great performances, I caught a stitch of it on my phone because I have the PBS app, and you too can see this. So I got to see it, and it was just as beautiful on film as it was in person. Yeah. LaTonya Moore as Billy it's devastatingly beautiful singing. She straddles that line between really beautiful classical technique, but allowing it to be very sort of waily and letting those chords slap a little when things need to be a little bit more guttural, and even having some gospel elements mixed into it. But she did it in a way that was healthy, because I've seen people try to do that to evoke emotion, and it hurts my throat to like, I will hold it if I'm watching them. But LaTonya navigates all that real beautifully. Also, Reginald Smith Jr. as Uncle Paul, my goodness, the instrument on that man, it was an extraordinary. Every time he sang, I was very excited. Although, to be fair, there's some heavy subject matter in this, and when his character first came on stage, I was afraid he was the nature of the heavy subject matter. And I was
Me
like,
too.
No, not Uncle Paul. And then it wasn't him. And finally, the opening ballet of Act 2 might possibly have been the thing that I remember and was moved by the most of everything that was happening. It was a really beautiful, extraordinary piece of storytelling, but from the costumes to the choreography, everything about it was just so extraordinary. Of course, when Charles Baby goes to college, you have the whole amazing scene of him in college with the incredible freaking step. As soon as they mentioned that he has gotten his acceptance letter to Grambling, I was like, yes, I forgot that's coming. This is going to be great. But there was something so majestic about that, and powerful. Now, Weston, you mentioned that like the audience was engaged, but quietly. My audience was engaged, and we were not quiet. We were not quiet.
During the step, my audience kind of came out of the woodwork too. I mean, you can't not. You know what I mean?
We didn't save it for the party at Grambling. We were having guttural vocal reactions to devastating things happening on screen all throughout the piece. But yeah, I mean, people were out of their seats losing it during the Grambling sequence. So as impactful as that dance is, and as history making as that portion of the dance was, that Act 2 ballet, it laid me out flat.
Yeah, the dancing really was extraordinary. I feel like a lot of times, I think of operas in ballets as being kind of a relic of the past sometimes, which is, maybe a little bit narrow-minded of me. Like I always, if somebody says ballet and opera at the same time, I think Baroque, I think 19th century Paris.
I think Oliver.
I think of Oliver specifically. But like, it's been a long time since I've seen a ballet sequence in an opera, or ballet sequences in an opera, that were so genuinely connected with what was going on. They're not dancing just to be dancing. That they're so necessary. And so unapologetically just dance, and I really wasn't expecting to be surprised by that going in, but I'm glad you mentioned it, Ashlee, because it really hit me too in the same way.
That's actually why I got on the PBS app to watch part of the great performances, is because I wanted to go back and watch that ballet again. It's absolutely stunning.
I did watch it on Great Performances last week on PBS. The reason that we go to live performance, the reason that we go to live sports, is to see something that we never thought was possible. To see something that is utterly unforgettable. It doesn't always happen in sports. It rarely happens in the theater. Watching this streamed production of Fire Shut Up in My Bones, you are seeing things that you never thought possible and that you will never forget.
Good call. Bad call on Opera Box Score.
Speaking of awards, I finally watched the Oscars clip. Dang, Will Smith really did slap Chris Rock.
Yeah. Did you miss that?
I mean, like, I knew that it had happened. Like, I don't care about the Oscars because I don't watch movies, but I did want to watch that little clip, and I was like, dang, like, he really hit him. And then he really swore. Like, he was mad.
And there are a lot of takes on why that may have been the case. I definitely recommend to you Emmanuel Acho, ACHO. He's a great thinker and talker, and he has a really great sort of take on the how and the why and the years of experience that came before that moment. And his perspective is a really great take.
Interesting. Does he say that violence doesn't solve anything?
He doesn't say that expressly. I mean, I think he's definitely in the maybe don't hit people category, but
Right.
he adds more nuance and context that I think is a really excellent take that I would prefer to defer to him as a black man to cover.
Ashlee, what's your good call?
My good call, speaking of Grammys, is Jon Batiste won the final award of the night for Album of the Year, and his acceptance speech really got me in the gut, and it's something that I think we should all ruminate on and think about because so much of what he said really does hit for our community and our art form. He said, "I really believe this to my core. There is no best musician, best artist, best dancer, best actor. The creative arts are subjective, and they reach people at a point in their lives when they need it most. A song or an album is made, and it almost has a radar to find the person when they need it the most. This is for real art, real musicians. Let's just keep going. Be you. I love you even if I don't know you."
Yeah. That is it for this week's edition of America's
Oh, you're just
Talk
going to jump
Radio
right
Show.
over me, huh? We're back to this again.
Did you have a good call or a bad call? I thought that was
My
such a-
good call.
How could this possibly be better than Jon Batiste? But go ahead, Weston. No,
Well,
please.
good
We'd love to
news.
Hear the
Good
little
news.
nothing that you have to say.
Well, as I mentioned at the beginning of the show, I did adopt a dog over the weekend, and it was very, very important. And this is always the biggest test of a dog in the Williams household. We take them in, we bring them into the house for the first time, we get them all comfortable, and then we go and find the weirdest piece of music we can possibly find. In my case, it was Stockhausen's Donnerstag Auslicht. And just blast that puppy as loud as possible. And she didn't freak out. She loved it. We're on the same wavelength. We're vibing now. It's great.
Now you're hurting animals. Is that what you're saying?
Please don't call animal control on me for playing Stockhausen to my dog.
I won't.
God, I get us canceled off Dallas and you get arrested for dog harm.
End of the road. Apparently, it's also the end of the road for Kansas. UNC 38, Kansas 22. 2 minutes left in the first half. Tobias Wright now apparently pooping in his pants. That's it for this week's edition of America's Talk Radio Show about opera. Our announcer, Norm Woodel, he's at normwoodel.com. If you're watching on TDO, make sure you subscribe to the podcast. Get that full show. Stitcher, Spotify, you click follow. Apple Podcasts, hit the plus sign. Again, send us a voice memo. Email us your hot takes, operaboxscore@gmail.com. You're going to get that beer coaster, that OBS lapel pin. Our creative consultant is Oliver Camacho. Our audio and video editor is Weston Williams. For your co-host, Ashlee Hardgrave, I'm George Cederquist asking you to continue the conversation about opera as you prepare for baseball's opening day. We're back with an all-new show next week. We head overseas for more season previews, and Oliver inducts a personal hero into the OBS Hall of Fame. Plus, you get more opera headlines, more hot takes, and no more Anna Netrebko, apparently. Join us.